the definition of the regression, what are the features, the difference between, the correlation and regression analysis, types of regression analysis we are going to discuss, and what are the properties of regression analysis. That is, and along with that, what are the limitations of regression analysis we are going to discuss here. As the regression is, moving backward or going back, stepping down, literally we can say. But the term regression, which was, first introduced by Francis Galton, particularly uh, to find out the relationship between heights of fathers and sons. Is a study related to heights of fathers and sons during the period 1877. Okay, so he used the term regression for the first time in his analysis. In his title of his paper, The Regression Towards Hereditary and Hereditary Status. So here in his analysis, as I said, two groups, sons and fathers. The tall fathers will have the tall sons, and the short fathers will have the short sons. The average height of, when we talk about the fathers, all the tall fathers and sons will be less than the average height of their fathers. So the average height of that short fathers, sons will be more than the average height of their fathers. He has studied related to that. Yeah, sorry for the inconvenience. So here, the Galton has studied the average relationship between the two uh, variables. Okay, that is heights of the fathers and heights of the sons. So graphically, he described the relationship between, the heights of the fathers and the heights of the sons. Here, with the help of the regression line, he explained. So, what is the meaning of, again, the technique regression, and how it is helpful for the statistical analysis and all? So, definition, the regression analysis, it is a mathematical measure. The average relationship between two or more variables. What does it mean? So when you consider the observations, when you consider the variables, that is x variable and y variable, y is dependent variable and x is independent variable. Okay, we need to find out the relationship between these two variables. It is when you write a equation, that is with the help of the mathematical measures, the average relationship between these two in terms of original data, that may be time series data. Okay, so here according to Hamburg, the term regression analysis that refers to the methods by which they estimate the values of all the variables from the knowledge of the values, one or more other variables, and measure the errors involved in the estimation with the help of the regression. So we observe this regression analysis. We need to observe. It explains the cause and effect relationship. It explains the impact between the two or more variables. Whether the variables are influencing positive, whether these variables are influencing negative on the dependent variable. It explains. So when we observe the characteristics of our regression analysis, it consists of the mathematical devices that are used to measure the average relationship between two or more closely related variables. As we know, demand is a function of price. Here we are considering two variables. One is demand, that is dependent variable, and the price, independent variable. The price is influencing the demand. So if we are having the data of demand and price, with the help of the regression analysis, we can identify the impact, whether the positive relationship between price and demand or whether the negative relationship between these two. At the same time, it identifies the percentage elasticities, how much impact on that dependent variable it can be, whether two or more variables. It used to estimate the unknown values of some dependent variable with reference to known values of the independent variable values. So with the help of the explanatory variables, we also call it as independent variables. We also call explanatory variables. These are the variables influencing the demand. So we can identify whether it is positive or negative impact with known variable to unknown variable values. Okay, and it provides the mechanism for prediction. We can easily predict whether today's or yesterday's prices may influence today's stock market or not. Or today's prices may influence tomorrow's. We can predict with the help of the data over a period of time. So the values, particularly one variable in terms of other variables, that values of the other, we can calculate, the regression analysis with the help of these values. So we can come to know how much it is impacting on y. This x variable we can easily identify. We can take a number of example. For example, FDI is a independent variable. FDI is a exogenous variable, okay, or explanatory variable. It impacting on the GDP, whether it is positive impacting or negative impact. We are considering two variables. One is FDI, the another one is GDP. So when we having these two variables data, when we run the regression analysis, we come to know whether the FDI is positive impacting on the economy or negative impact. If it is negative impacting, we try to reduce the FDI. If it is positive impact, policymakers or government, they try to increase the FDI inflow in the country because it increases the economic growth. It is positive impacting, right? So we can come to know the impact of one variable to another variable with the help of the regression analysis. Last time we discussed correlation and regression, right? So when we come across between these two, what are the differences between correlation and regression analysis? As correlation explains the relationship between two or more variables, it cannot explain the impact. Regression analysis explains the impact. Regression analysis explains the cause and effect relationship. But correlation only relationship explains whether it positive relation, whether it is negative relationship between the two variables or no relation at all. It explains. Coming to the second differentiate between these two, correlation need not implies the cause and effect relationship between two or more variables. This correlation, it cannot explain the cause and effect relationship. Because why? Because it explains only the relationship between the variables, two or more variables. But regression analysis clearly indicates that the cause and effect relationship. It explains the cause and effect. Which one is cause and which one is affecting. Income and consumption. Income cause effect on consumption. If your income fluctuates, increase or decrease, consumption also increase or decrease. Because income is the independent variable, income is the explanatory variable, income is the influence. It is influencing the other variable, that is consumption, right? So cause is income, effect is consumption. Cause is one variable, effect on another variable. So regression analysis, it clearly explains the cause and effect relationship between two or more variables. Okay. So this is the another differentiation between correlation and regression analysis. Coming to the another differentiation between the correlation and regression analysis, it may be cause of nonsense or spurious correlation. It may be spurious correlation. But coming to there is nothing like nonsense regression. But still, we can identify the nonsense results from the regression. So what does it mean? If we consider a model and we run the regression analysis, if we are having more than two variables in the equation, okay, even if we consider four variables in the equation, one is dependent variable, the another three variables are explanatory variables or independent variables. when we want to run the regression, sometimes, the values maybe gives positive or negative sense, significant. But when we observe the t-values and the probability values, that becomes, insignificant. Even though the variable is influencing positive sign, but statistically insignificant. Why? Because if we consider more independent variables in the equation, sometimes there may be, multicollinearity problem. So that time, the results will be spurious, or we can say nonsense in the regression analysis. That is the another case. So here, when we are talking about the correlation analysis, there is a sort of, mutual dependency. It is, immaterial whether y is equal to, is a function of x, or x is equal to function of y. There is a, sort of mutual dependency between the two variables. One is x and the another one is y. Coming to the regression analysis, it establishes the functional relationship where, the mathematical equation or it shows the dependency of one variable on the other. In other words, y is a function of x or x is a function of y. Both need not to be true. Both may not be true because sometimes, the variable which may not be influenced. So that is the reason why they both are need not to be. So here, when we are talking about the correlation coefficient between, x and y or y and x, between the two variables, x and y, we measure the degree of, linear relationship between two variables, which is, mutual. Symmetrically, when we are writing an equation, correlation x and y, that is equal to correlation of, y and x. So when we are talking about the regression analysis aims to establish the functional relationship between, two or more variables. So with this relationship, we can predict or estimate the values of dependent variable for a given data, right? So with the help of the regression analysis, after the analysis, we get the coefficient value. From that value, we need to predict whether it is the relationship with is positive effect or it becomes, negative effect. We easily analyze with the help of the regression analysis. Okay. So the another one, dependent variable, and which is, independent variable. When we are talking about this, it is immaterial, which of, x and y, there is a immaterial because we are interdependence. This, but when we talk about the, regression analysis, the value of independent variables is given. It, it also reflect the nature of the variable, which is, the dependent variable, and the another one is independent variable. Okay. So the regression coefficient, which are not symmetric in x and y. So these two are not at all equal. So correlation coefficient that is related to the measure of linear relationship between x and y variables. It is pure number lying between -1 and +1. The range of correlation, you can say, between -1 and +1. The regression coefficient, which are absolute measures that represents change in the value of the variable x and y. Once the functional form of regression curve, particularly known by substituting the value of dependent variable, we can obtain the value of independent variable and the value in the units of measurement of the values. Correlation has limited applications and confirmed only to study the linear relation between the variables. But the regression analysis, when we observe that, uh, it studies the linear as well as non-linear relationship. Both the relationships it can explain or study. So therefore, we can say that it has much wider application, this regression analysis. So we have discussed types of regression analysis. There are different types of regression analysis are there. Simple and multiple regression, linear and nonlinear regression, total and partial regression analysis. So simple regression, when we are talking about that, there only two variables are considered, y and x variables. So it representing the, for example, sales and advertisements. Sales are depending on the advertisements, right? So sales are dependent variable, advertisements are independent variable. Advertisements influence the sales. So we can express in terms of a mathematical equation. Y is equal to the function of x. X is the independent variable. Between these two variables, there is a functional relationship between sales and advertisement. If the firm or industry, if they spend more on advertisements, there is a chance to increase their sales. Because when the firms are spending some amount of money, means that is, as I said, advertisement cost. Why they are doing? To promote their products in the public. So automatically the sales may be increased, right? That is the reason why. So here we can identify how much impacting on the sales with the help of the regression analysis. Simple regression. Because here we are considering only two variables. One is sales, the another one is uh, advertisement cost or expenditure. Right? That if we consider the only two variables, we call it as simple regression. If we consider in the equation more than two variables, then we call it as multiple regression. We call it as multiple regression algorithm. Okay? So, for linear and non-linear, as we know that if the mathematical or what can we say, the regression line, okay? It gives the rise in the straight line when data the related to the two variables. Okay, with the data related to two variables. When we draw a plotted diagram, we can easily find out the linear relationship between the two variables. What does it mean? The change in the value of the independent variable influences the occurrence of constant changes in the other variables, that is dependent variable. So mathematical equation, when we write y is equal to alpha plus beta y, beta x, beta x. If you take, this example, the y is the consumption, A is autonomous consumption, B is the, uh, slope or coefficient, we can say that, and X is the income. X is the income. Here consider only two variables. If we add, another variable that may be income or which influence the consumption. Okay. So here we can observe the linear relationship because these two move together, consumption and income. These two are moves together, right? According to, as we know that according to Keynes psychological, consumption is a function of income. But when income increases, consumption also increase, but less than the proportion, less than the proportion, right? So here there is a linear regression analysis and non-linear also there. So when we talk about the non-linear regression analysis, on the other hand, okay, it gives the a rise to curved line when the data related to two variables which are plotted on a graph paper. In such a case, the regression equation will be a function involves in terms of higher order squares or cube. It may be we'll get. The another when we observe related to the regression analysis, there are various methods are there. You can analyze with the help of these methods, particularly regression analysis. Graphical method through the regression line. As I said, the Galton has used first time heights of the fathers and heights of the sons. Right? Graphical method through the graphical method. This graphical method, again, scatter diagram, three-dimensional diagram. Scatter and three-dimensional diagrams. Coming to the algebraic, through the regression equation, we can analyze the regression, normal equation, or through the regression coefficient, we can observe. So when we are talking about the regression equation through the regression coefficient, again, we can observe by direct method or, shortcut method. Shortcut method, again, without step deviation and with step deviation, we can, calculate or study the regression analysis, right? There are, positive or negative slope or no regression. bending, backward bending, right? This regression we can observe. Here, when we are talking about the uh, regression analysis, properties we need to discuss. This is more important. Properties. So this regression means the two regression coefficients gives the coefficient of correlation. The when we are talking about the geometric mean, when we are talking about geometric mean, the two regression coefficients that gives the coefficient of correlation. The second one, both regression coefficient that must have same as I said sign, algebraic sign. Both of them that will be either positive or negative sign. This is because minus sign with one of coefficients will be make the product of the two coefficients, and that case we cannot find the square root, and that obtain the correlation coefficient. Obtain the correlation coefficient, right? So the first property mentioned about that will be variated. The nature of regression coefficient that reflected on the nature of coefficient of correlation. Okay, so this means that if the regression coefficients are positive correlation, coefficient will be positive, and then the regression coefficients becomes negative, right? So if one regression coefficient is greater than the unity, that is 1, other must be less than the unity. That is the another. If both regression coefficients happen to be more than their geometric mean, that will exceed, and which will not be given correlation of coefficient. Okay, so regression coefficients are independent of change of origin but not of scale. This means that the original values of particular variables, two or more, two variables if we added, or if you subtracted from constant values of regression coefficients, that will remain in the same. So when we observe the original values of the two variables which are multiplied or divided by some constant, the values of regression, that equation will not be remaining the same. That you have to observe. Why we want to use this regression analysis? Why we want to study, or why we want to use in our study? No, nowadays, this regression analysis, it is a statistical tool that is used in various fields, mostly related to the natural, physical, and social sciences. So it provides functional relationship between two or more variables when we consider in the equation. When we want to study the regression analysis, or the cause and effect relationship between two or more variables, we need to observe the regression, right? So this regression analysis, it provides the relationship between two or more related variables. One can easily estimate or predict the unknown value of one variable from the known variable. Okay, that is more advantage. The another uh, usage or uses of regression analysis, it provides a measure of coefficient correlation between two or more variables that can be calculated with the help of square root of the two regression coefficients. Two regression coefficients. So this regression analysis, it provides the coefficient of determination, and it speaks about the effect in the independent variable on the dependent variable. So the coefficient of determination is computed by taking the product of two regression coefficients, right? That is also one of the advantage. Greater the value of coefficient determination R square, the better is a fit, the more useful for the regression equation as the estimated or estimating devices. Okay. So here it provides the valuable tool for measuring and estimating the cause and effect relationship among the variables. And it is highly useful for estimating the demand, supply curves. It highly useful for the production side, cost functions, consumption of consumption function or income, everything we can observe or we can analyze with the help of the regression analysis. With the help of the regression analysis. There are various limitations also there. These limitations, when we observe, one of the important one is that it assumed to be cause and effect relationship between two variables remaining unchanged. This assumption may not be always hold. The estimation of values of variables on the basis of regression analysis or equation may lead to errors that leads to mislead the results, that becomes spurious regression or spurious results, nonsense results, we can say that. That is also one of the limitations. The another one is functional relationship that establishes between the two or more variables functional relationship. So when we are talking about the functional relationship, it established between the two or more variables, on the basis of some limited data. So it may not be whole. If more and more data when we add, that can be considered as, again, that leads to mislead the results. That is also one of the negative sense with the help of the limitation, we can say that. So it involves very lengthy and complicated procedure for calculation of all the analysis. It is very lengthy, which involves, and it cannot be used while analyzing the qualitative data, qualitative phenomena. We know that no, there are two kinds of data, quantitative data and qualitative data. Quantitative data, we are measuring with the numerical numbers, and qualitative data, we are we cannot measure in terms of numerical numbers. We cannot measure in terms of numerical numbers, right? That is qualitative. Then when we know, how can we calculate or analyze the qualitative data, like male and female, right? We cannot measure which one is more influencing, which one is less. For male, how much value we want to give? No value. For female, no. Honesty and crime. Is there any measure for these variables? No, right? So these variables, we call it as, qualitative variables. These variables are, we call it as qualitative variables. So generally, again, when we cross-check the correlation and the regression analysis, correlation is literally, it explains the relationship between two or more variables, which are, corresponding movement of the one another. This correlation cannot explain the impact. This correlation cannot explain the cause and effect. So what it explains? It explains only now the relationship between two or more. Literally, we can say that the relationship, whether the relationship, positive relationship, whether the relationship is negative relationship. Okay, that is the another. Coming to the regression side, regression means the stepping back or returning to the average value. That is express the average relationship between two or more variables. The regression analysis explains the impact of two or more variables. How much variation, how much impact on there, one variable to another variable. It regression analysis can explain. So coming to the correlation analysis, it, as I said, it cannot explain the cause and effect relationship. Correlation does not explain cause and effect relationship. It explains only the relationship between, literally, it explains the relation between X and Y, whether it positive X and Y relationship, whether there is a negative relation between X and Y, it explains, or there is no relationship between X and Y. This correlation can explain. But coming to the regression analysis, as I said, it explains the cause. It explains the effect. Cause and effect also, through the regression analysis, we can identify. We can identify the relationship. Okay. And also, there is a, when we observe, uh, types of regression analysis, as I said, simple regression, multiple regression, linear regression and non-linear regression, and a total and partial regression. These are the types of regression analysis. When we recall the regression equations that are also known as estimating equations, regression equations are called as estimating equations, which are algebraic explanations of all the regression lines. The line of regression line, we call it as the line of best fit, because when we observe with the help of the references of these lines, we can get the best estimates of the values of one variable for the specified one variable to the specified the other variable. There are two regression lines still. There are two regression equations. They are regression equation of y on x, that is used for describe the variation of the values of y for a given change in the x. The another one is regression equation of x and y, which are described the variation of x for a given changes in the y, right? So the overall, it goes through the overall, the means of variable, it gives the best fit for the data. It lies, positive, negative deviations from the line. These all are related to, regression analysis, which are related to regression analysis. Okay. Coming to the another concept, that is index numbers. One of the important statistical devices and techniques which are used today in index numbers and widely used for judging the pulse of the economy, right? So in the beginning, they were originally constructed to affect the changes in prices. Today we use index numbers for cost living, for industrial production. We are using indexes, agricultural production, import and exports, right? So these are, we use with the help of the indexes. The index numbers, when we observe, the first constructed by, during the period of 1764 to compare the Italian price index in 1750 with price level of 1500 rupees. So here, the index numbers that is described as barometer of economic activity, which means that, the using index numbers, one will be able to know the changes in the economic activity. The another, when we observe the index numbers, exact meaning, index numbers are the indicators which are measure the percentage change in the variable or group of variable over a specified time. Index numbers are the indicators to measure the percentage changes in the variables. By saying that the index of export for the year 2011 or 2010 or 2001. Okay, when we are taking 2001, 125, by taking the base year is 2000. It means that, there is an increase in the 120 file. From that, there is an increase 25% in the country's export compared to the previous year, corresponding year. Okay, that we can say that it is an indicator. So according to Cowder, they have given the index number definition. Index numbers are the devices for measuring differences in the magnitude of group of related variables. So we can say that simply an index number is a statistical measure designed to show the changes of variable or groups related to the variables which respect to or with respect to various factors. That may be time period, that may be geographical location, sometimes income and professional also affect, right? According to the Humber, he has given one definition. It's the simplest form, and understanding the index numbers particularly, nothing more than the relative measurement of these changes. periods. So what are the uses of these index numbers? Why should we use? What are the uses of index numbers? Index numbers are, indispensable tools which are very useful in several ways in the modern society. So one of the important use of these index numbers will help for the wage analysis or salary for the policy of various organizations. So they are also helpful for the sociological or population indices, psychological or psychologists. They can measure the intelligence quotient, right? So demographical population policy also they can analyze with the help of health authorities for the preparing of health indices, educational research to measure the school effectiveness. These through the uses of index numbers we can analyze. These index numbers, particularly when we observe, which are used to study the trends or tendencies of industrial sector, agriculture, and production. They can easily understand the analysis with the help of the index numbers. These index numbers are used to study the general conditions of business activity. These index numbers are used for forecasting the future economic activity. Index numbers are used for deflating nominal wage into real wage or nominal money that related to be income and the real income. So these are the uses or advantages of price index. The issues in construction in the index numbers when we observe the purpose of index. When we are constructing the index, it has to be mentioned specifically, the purpose for which the index is going to be constructed. That is more important. What is the purpose we are using the index numbers, right? And also, the selection of base year is more important. For constructing the index number is, one should take the relevance period. The reference period is called as base year. We need to construct the index numbers. For that, we have a period that we call it as that reference period. We call it as year or month or week, a day. That is base year. So the index for this base period is always taken as 100. Base year is 100 we have taken. While selecting the base year, one should there are important considerations are there. So while constructing the index numbers, we need to observe the base year. The base year should be in a nominal year. What does it mean? There should not be any fluctuations or wars or earthquakes, famine, or suddenly it may be boom or depreciation, which should not be considered as a base year. So base year we consider as 100. So the base year should not be too distant in the past. So what does it mean? It should be appropriate to compare in a recent data or recent year. Okay. And also the another issue while constructing the index number is that fixed the base or no chain base. The another one is selection of number of items. The number of items which we should include in the index numbers, that is more important. That we determine for what purpose we are included in the, or why we are constructing the index number. While considering the commodities, we must consider either habits or taste or customs of the people. We need to construct an index number based on their preferences, right? So this is also one of the issue while constructing the index numbers. I'll stop here. Next class, I'll continue.